started since we have quite a few people in the room already. So welcome. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Yay. Oh, and someone already spotlighted me. Look at that. Thank you, Barry. So this is the show for the month, St. Patty's Day. Happy St. Patty's Day, everybody. If you're not Irish, I am sorry. Being Irish is awesome. No, I'm kidding. We have a really good show for you today. The tellers I picked for you today, they're people I actually know personally, have met, have either talked with them, seen them tell, and they all have a very unique personality or have something to bring, and really all about just luck and their journey through this life. But first, a few rules and a few things about the show. One, definitely please keep muted while people are telling a story. It just helps with distractions. So yes, if you want to leave your camera off, that is definitely okay. But if you're someone like me who is a comedian, I thrive on reactions. I thrive on attention. I'm probably borderline narcissistic. So please leave your cameras on for people like me. I want to see your faces. But otherwise, I totally understand if you can't. That's fine. I am going to share my screen. And because we are going to do a land acknowledgement. I always like to do land acknowledgements, especially with the guild, because we really do have that appreciation for the land that we're on. I get it. We are in a virtual space right now. And you're probably thinking, why are we doing this? Well, we're still sitting in a room and we are still all together, somehow, some way, sitting on a piece of land that did belong to a Native American or Indigenous people. And I would love to give respect to them and share my screen. So can everybody see that? I hope. Yay. Okay. So we do have, like I said, we have the ability to come together as a guild and meet as friends from different parts of the world and be here. We are on this physical land here in Washington State, which was the traditional territory of many, many indigenous tribes. And we'll get there, and I'm going to list, I do have a list of all of them, and I will give acknowledgement to all of them. We want to show our respect as the guild, that how grateful we are to have this opportunity to coexist together. This is where I have always told people, I do get a little uncomfortable sometimes doing a land acknowledgement. Maybe that's like my internalized thing, because I am not Indigenous. In fact, I already did the 23andMe. We already proved that. So I do want to give a little bit of acknowledgement here already, because in the room, one of our tellers is Indigenous, and that is Wolfheart. So if you're going to have any education, want to learn anything, they are the person to go to as well. So one of your actual real life people that you know. So instead of getting so bogged down with resources, a lot of people love to give like websites and things to go to, which are great. So I will list some of two websites that are for educational purposes, that have, like I said, resources, policies, anything that you might want to know about Native culture. However, we are a culture now of influencers, content creators, small businesses, and I would like to just give acknowledgement to those people as well. So I have listed some that if you would like to go follow them, I would love for you to do that. One of my friends from high school, Devney Young, she is a jeweler and beater, also an Indigenous person. She was selling some of her stuff. I think she's taking a break, but she is on TikTok and she loves to do like the little, it's like a sensory thing where you watch her bead for a while. So that's pretty cool. I like that. Che Jim is on TikTok. Eagle Blackbird Lakota Lightning. I actually do follow all these people on TikTok. They talk about their culture, they do videos, and it's pretty neat to watch because while TikTok, a lot of negative stuff is out there, you can find some good resources. Some small businesses, just Bison Naturals Red Lavender Soap is one that I happened to find while doing my research. Bedray chocolates look really yummy to me. Medicine of the People, again, seemed really cool. Something that was a very natural type thing that you could use at home. And Prados Beauty. So if you have like a makeup, again, a very natural resource and something, and these are all Indigenous owned businesses. This is the list of tribes that are all in Washington State. This is why I said I cannot, unfortunately, list all of them or say all of them, but I do want to give respect here in the slide. So if you are ever wanting to know who is in Washington State, certainly ask. And I do have the slide here and I can let you know. This is a map of Washington State, and I always like to point this out because here is Spokane, and the border is right here. And here's Portland, that's Oregon. So all of this is where you're going to find all of those tribes. This was all here. And interestingly enough, something I did learn while I'm doing my ghost tours now is I knew that Seattle was the name of one of the Indigenous people who came here. That was his name. However, it's not his true name. His name could not be pronounced by the English language. So us, unfortunately, white settlers had to find some other way, and we shortened it to Seattle. So I think it might be a good thing because there is a tradition in their tribe that if you actually said their name out loud after they had passed on, they would not be able to rest. So maybe that's a good thing. Because one of our tellers today is from New York, I would like to acknowledge the New York state lines here, which does include Long Island, guys, just so you guys know, that's down here in Montauk. The Lenape and the Mohicans I saw were just happened to be the two major tribes that were, but there's many, many little ones, like I said, just like Washington State, that are broken up. If I used to live on Long Island, and there was many, many names that are, again, are very hard to pronounce, just like here. Massapequa, Connecticut, these are all tribe names, Native American words and stuff for them. I do want to give a little shout out to Shane as well, because Shane, if you want to just speak just a little bit, because she's in Texas at the moment. Wolfhart, I see your hand. I'll get to you in a second.
So yes, I'm actually in Taché, and I'm on a great prairie land, although this part where I am actually is on a cliff overlooking, but there's a great prairie land in between the branches of the Arcacosa, which are the Caddo words for this land and this water. The Caddo word that this land was named for, and there was a Spanish version from Taché to Tejas, and from Tejas then to Texas in English. And I honor the peoples who gathered on this great prairie because it was a gathering place of nations. But the peoples who lived most in this area, from my understanding, were the Caddo, which I love and know more about, and Comanche and the Wichita.
Oh, thank you, the Wichita. Yeah, Wolfhart, I would love to acknowledge you now, since you're the one who knows.
Yeah, I really appreciate this because, as you can see across the top, we have this long banner that says the Iroquois. The Iroquois are more of a blanket term for the many tribes that fell underneath it when they formed the Confederacy to push back invaders, which unfortunately were also many of our ancestors with me being mixed, there were white ancestors on that side too. But on the map here, we see underneath the Iroquois, the Cayuga, the Onondaga, which comes from Moac, which is the word for bear, misinterpreted by the French. But what doesn't show here are two things. The Tuscarora joined the Confederacy later because they were becoming overwhelmed by what we perceived at the time as enemy forces. And way down on the tip where Long Island is, the entire middle and upper half of Long Island to this day is still Shinnecock territory. And they're very much struggling with the advent of certain religious organizations who have used a tremendous amount of government and bureaucratic red tape to keep them from owning their own businesses and advertising anything in and around their own reservations. But it's a lesser known fact about New York. But I absolutely love this map because it's relatively up to date compared to a lot of the ones that are out there.
Yeah. Thank you, Wolfhart. Yeah, that was something I didn't know about Long Island. I knew that there was some out there. I just didn't know the struggle that they were having. So yeah, thank you.
I really appreciate this. Carry on.
And that is my land acknowledgement for today. So we will get started with the show. And first up, we have my friend, Debbie Dixon. So Debbie, I met at a show in Burien. You guys might know this because it's 7 Stories. Eric and Sylvia run the whole thing. And Debbie really spoke to me because, boy, oh boy, have we talked? I mean, if you get to know her and some of her stories, it's like, wow, how, like, see, you see me stuttering. It's like, how did you get from point A to point B? And it's an amazing journey, especially through yoga and finding her inner peace. And so I'm going to let her share what she wants to share with her journey on that. So take it away, Debbie, please.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you for the little education just then. I wasn't expecting that. So that was really awesome. I appreciate it very much. Am I launching right into my story now? Is it on me? Yes. Okay. All right. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Debbie Dixon. And tonight we're talking about luck, which it's, sadly, I didn't put the two things together until very recently, that it's also St. Patrick's Day, which is probably why. And suddenly it occurred to me, I'm like, oh, that makes sense now, but yeah, anyways, I think luck is such an interesting concept. So that was why I didn't even put it together. I didn't think it needed a reason. It's just, especially for me, because I have such a, I guess, unique view of my feelings about luck. And well, let me start by saying that as Polite Kitty had mentioned, I have been to places in my life that most people don't return from. And so a lot of the people that have met me will say, especially if they know some of my story, and then they see where I am today, they'll say, geez, Debbie, you're super lucky. And it's so funny because I just don't believe in luck. And it almost feels like it's diminishing, right? For somebody to say, oh, you're so lucky. And I'm like, am I lucky? Or is there, is there some background into that? And I definitely believe in the laws of nature. And I believe that, everything kind of happens for a reason. I believe in karma. I believe what we give, we get. Our thoughts, words, and actions sort of create our reality. And I do believe there's some magic in there somewhere. If we've ever noticed that, we're desiring something, we're wanting something in our life, oftentimes that thing doesn't show up until you stop thinking about it. They'll always say that the relationship doesn't show up until you're not thinking about it or wanting the relationship, and then boom, there it is. And so there is sort of a magical element towards, the laws of nature, but I just think that has more to do with timing and the culmination. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background so you can understand what I'm talking about. So let's see. When I was 15, I was fending for myself. It's very unusual for a 15-year-old. I was kind of couch surfing, moving from couch to couch and just landing wherever I could, and grateful for it. I had chosen this, so it was actually a gift, a blessing. I viewed it as freedom because my other option was far worse. But one thing that happens is, when you take and you have somebody who is sort of alone and, uncertain about what's going to happen next, and they're vulnerable and they want more than anything to be loved. Well, especially when you're dealing with a teenager, it's really easy for that individual to end up pregnant, which I did. So by 17, I had a baby. So add that to the mix, I'll say that my house growing up, the appearance from the external world, just like everything, Facebook, Instagram, we can all look at the shiny object, and go, oh my gosh, look at how great that is. Look at how wonderful their life is. And this was sort of the house I grew up in. I mean, from outside views, it was like the all-American home with the white picket fence. It was like the perfect place to be. And then you go inside those doors and you discover that inside there's hurt people hurting people. And there was me at one point, a small child, and undergoing, physical and emotional and sexual abuse. And I remember so many times that I would try and escape those things, closing my eyes and just envisioning, going somewhere else, or opening my eyes and having that perfect house. But it just didn't happen. And, what happened was, this person, this child, that had escaped that scenario, couldn't escape her. So, I could go somewhere else, but I was always going to be there. And at that point, I had developed some pretty strong beliefs about the world, based on what I had been taught. So I, view the world as a really scary place with awful people that do awful things to you. So it didn't really matter that I had been free from the circumstances, because I was still sort of there, and kind of living that. And so life didn't get a whole lot easier too quickly. And once my son was born, things like food and shelter became a priority, right? So, it's one thing when it's me and I could sleep from couch to couch, but once you have a child, it's super different. And I was kind of if there was an application for traffickers, to hire somebody that would be a sex worker, I checked every single box. So I'm like, bing, 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 low self-esteem, check. Hungry, check. No food, no shelter, check. Alone, check. Abused, sexually abused, check. I was all of it. So I was the perfect candidate. So they found me. And I ended up spending 12 years of my life sort of trapped in that world. It took me a really long time to find my way out and really liberate myself from that. And, when I think about how I did it, the one thing I'm certain of is it wasn't luck. That's for sure. It started with a strong desire, and I had to change my mind. Remember those thoughts and words and actions. I knew that I was going to have to change my view of the world. And that had emerged once I found yoga, as Flight Kitty had mentioned. Yoga, I didn't know when I started practicing yoga that yoga was going to change my life. It was just an exercise, but it did. And at the time, I really didn't even understand how, outside of the fact that it gave me a little space in my mind to maybe, pause. It also created an opportunity for me to reassemble myself, to sort of spend time with me without the distractions, without the input from the world. And, I want to be clear that yes, yoga did provide an opportunity for a transformation, but it wasn't overnight. It wasn't like, oh, flip a switch, done. It took a while. It was a big journey, a long journey. And really, there was only moments way back then for years and years and years where there was just a glimpse of a light, where I just could see that maybe there was a possibility of something outside of this, but I still hadn't experienced it. It took a long time. And my yoga teacher, she was such a gift because she would say things like, you know, there's always going to be somebody that can do the pose better than you. And that's why it's a practice, right? But not only is there always going to be somebody that can do the pose better, there's always going to be somebody that is looking at you in admiration. Maybe they're not even able to do what you can do. And, you know, the same thing is true about luck. We always see people that have the things that we want and we think they're so lucky. And then there's always those people that are looking at us and they're like, I wish I had what she has, or yes, you know, they're so lucky. And so it's all relative, right? This idea, this concept of luck. And the other gift my teacher gave me was the concept of karma, that what you give out to the world, you get back. And this is what got me thinking. Because when I was in that place, when I was homeless and struggling and fighting and the world was a bad place and people were bad and it was me against the world and survival and all of that, when in that mentality, I felt forced to do things that, you know, if I was in a much more grounded, stable place, I wouldn't have done. Obviously, sex working was one of them, but thinking about stealing. I mean, there was times where I stole formula, where I sold diapers, where I stole things to return so I could pay for my power bill, so I could have lights on and heat for the baby. You know, you did what you can to survive. And I felt I would make up in my mind that I wasn't harming anybody. It's a store, it's this, I would figure out ways. You get really crafty when you're in survival mode. Well, when the karma thing came to my mind, and here I was looking to really make a leap in my life, and I noticed that every time I would get 2 steps forward, I would be pulled back 10 steps, it felt like. And it was like my past just kept coming up and grabbing me and pulling me back. You know, I would think that suddenly I'm getting better, life is happening, and then all of a sudden, here comes this bill from out of nowhere, and I'm barely scraping by. And I started to think about, you know, well, maybe this is all karma. It was like every single time that I sold something that was getting put somewhere in a bank somewhere that I was going to have to pay back. I had just built up a giant deficit. And at some point, I'm going to have to pay all of this back before I can elevate, before I can be free. And so this whole thing culminates into this one moment, this one day. And, you know, I was really used to going to jail, you know, having my power taken away. This was not something out of the ordinary. But on this day, I had my son in the car. He was 2. And he was in the back seat in his car seat. And I got pulled over. And it was one of those, like, I'm making 2 steps forward. I had a whole bunch of money in my pocket. And I was going to get us an apartment. And I was excited. And then, boom, you know, I could view it as bad luck. But I didn't. I got pulled over, and you know, the Karma Bank came to collect, and I'm getting you know, the handcuffs put on, the rights read to me, and my son is in the back seat trying to get out of his car seat and fighting, you know, crying, and he ends up making his way out of his car seat and climbs over the hatch into the back. And I remember it so clearly because it was so devastating. I'm watching my son running because he's scared to death of what's happening. And these are police officers. The thing that I tell him, you know, are the good guys and that they see in all his cartoons. Those are the good guys. And now what does that make me? You know, the person getting the handcuffs on. And they were going to take him to CPS, and I didn't have any power in this. I begged and pleaded that they call his dad and see if he would come and get him, which he did. And so I was so grateful for that. next thing you know, I'm in the jail. And I'd spent time, like I said, in jails before and in these jail cells, but I hadn't been in a holding cell with this many people before. And so it happened to be a busy night. And a lot of the people were people that I felt, even coming from everything that I came from, I felt were unsavory. They weren't like me. They were beneath me. And this was the way I viewed them. They were, drug addicts and, and I couldn't believe that I was in that same place with them. I felt offended and irritated. I'm waiting for the police to come and get me and see that I don't belong here. And they did. The police officer takes me out. They do something called PR. So they'll take you out to the side and they sit you down and ask you some questions. And they're basically testing to see whether or not they think you're a flight risk if they let you out. Will you show up for court the next day or the following, whatever. And I think they had called my parents. And my parents, were not very helpful. So I think they had said something like, keep her. I have no idea what they said. But next thing I know, I was being escorted back to this holding cell and I was really devastated. It cannot, unless you've experienced it, it can't really be described what it's like to have your power taken away like this. And not only that, but it felt extra, like they were just pouring, icing on the cake to have me have to have no power, but also be sitting in this situation where moments later, one of the women inside of the cell with me, the holding cell, got up, went over to the toilet, which was right in, you had to look at the toilet. It's right there. And pulled some tinfoil and some objects. I was trying not to look, but things out of her crotch. And then, started lighting. She had a lighter. She had the whole shebang. And now I'm breathing this in. And I had done drugs to self-medicate, obviously, through doing what I was doing and all of the stuff I had been through. Drugs were a savior for me. They're the reason I'm here with you today. But I had never done crack. And to me, that felt beneath me. And I didn't want to be subjected to it. I had these opinions. So now I was. And so I'm just sitting there looking, going, why don't they see it? Are they going to get me out of here? This is not okay. And then I thought about my brother. My brother had been an addict and crack was one of his favorite things. And I would think about him all the time in the way of, couldn't he see himself? Can he see what he looks like? And, I felt he belonged there, not me. And then all of a sudden, it was almost like I jumped out of my body and I'm looking at myself and I'm like, you think you're different, just like every other person in this room thinks they're different, but you're not. If you were different, you wouldn't be there. And that was the moment I was like, I've got to do something. I have to take back my power. I've got to change this. I can't let this happen again. So I spent a couple more days in jail, saw some judges, and I was finally free. And when I decided I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure this never happens again. I'm going to pay back the karma bank. So I called every single courthouse and got, a running tally of how much I owed. And it came to somewhere around $13,000, which is like $7 million in today's reference to somebody in that circumstance. It's really an incredible amount. And I was so determined. I was like, nothing's going to stop me. And so I decided I was going to do it. I got in my car. I had at that point, they had taken all my money when I went to court and all at $100. I got in my car with $100 and drove all the way to California on that amount. Gas was a lot cheaper back then, but at the same time, I didn't eat. I was so scared to even waste $1 not in the gas tank, but I made it. And I had a friend's couch out there I could stay at. And I went to work and I worked from sun up to sun. I mean, I worked and worked and worked until my feet were bleeding. I actually got to a point where I was physically ill and had to hospitalize myself. But I refused to call an ambulance. Somebody had to scoop me up out because I didn't want to spend the money that I'd been making on that. I was like determined to bring it back. And I was like, nobody's taking this from me. I don't care if I die in this hotel room. And I ended up making it back to Seattle barely with the $13,000. And this is where the thing where I wonder, is it luck? Because I did the unthinkable. For somebody who is in fight or flight, in survival, and has never had that kind of money sitting where, you know, I mean, I could have had it and just kept it as a safety net. I could have done anything, but I had made a promise. And I'd made a promise to me, I'd made a promise to God, I'd made a promise to everything. If I could get this $13,000, I was going to free myself. I was going to release myself from those shackles. And I did. I called every single courthouse, drove from place to place. By the way, I got pulled over in one of those things and ended up back in jail. Sons of bitches, but I did end up paying everybody off. And I can tell you that is why I'm here today. And what I bought back my freedom. And you see so many people, they would have gotten, maybe they would have gotten even to the same point as me, where they had done the work and they had done all the things. But once they had that money, the letting go of it, and the letting go of it to those, to courts and to, you know, that is where I can only say, I did something that is far greater than I don't even know where I found it. I don't know how, looking back, how I did it, but I thank myself every single day. And I wonder, you know, knowing what you know now, you know, would you say that it was luck? Or would you say, you know, that that was something that I earned, I deserved, that I created? And yeah, I bought my freedom and I got my power back. And yeah, that's my story of luck. So much for listening.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. I always said it's so interesting because like I said, like you're right. I listen to your story and I think, whoa, like would I have been able to do that in the same situation? Because I'm a parent too. I think a lot of us in this room are parents, and would we have done the same thing? Like you said, fight or flight takes in. I don't know. I also have my own feelings on sex work because I think it should be legal, but that's my own opinion. So moving on.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I think it should be legal. If it was, maybe I've not had the same.
Right. So, thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Up next, we have another person who is somebody I've known. Gosh, I can't even think of how long I've known this person, but we've met through the autistic community, and we've met through organizations, and basically known each other online, essentially. That's how we know. And I think a lot of us meet online nowadays, especially with the pandemic. It's really hard to make friends. And their name is Wolfheart. I love it. Just saying. They have prepared a story, and they are going to read this story. I have read it myself. It is fabulous. We have talked before about, they used to do, like I said, education and just reading. It's been a while since they've done storytelling, but I was so happy to have them on the show. So I would now like to introduce to you my friend, Wolfheart.
Hello, everyone, and good evening. Just for a bit of context on my name, for those of you who haven't met me online or in person, my name was actually affirmed by Dancing Moon Wolf, known from Mama Wolf's Magic Store, which is a relatively big internet following. She is a member of the Cherokee Nation, along with other old timers I've met in my life who reaffirm this name. Typically, you don't receive your name in English. In many tribes, there are different ways in which somebody is named at birth, and sometimes even after birth if somebody has an English name. My name was something that was affirmed by her as an elder within her beliefs from her tribe, and then others throughout my life who said, yes, this is your name. And to quote her, you have had this name before you were born into this world. You have had this name in spirit. Now, previously, that name had come to me in dreams and such, and no one knew it because I never told anyone. She had no way of picking up on this. And that's how my name came to be. Um, I grew up and attended courses later on in my life at the State University of New York at Cobleskill, where Lahaye, Mike Tarbell, former Vietnam veteran in special ops, is a story keeper for the Grand Council of the Mohawk Turtle Clan. And he would teach me a lot of our stories and the art of storytelling and such like that. So when I write and tell my stories, it may seem like there are no indigenous elements included, but there are little things, concepts of the afterlife, vast open places, inspired by the Iroquois concept of what was known as the land of the strawberries, which essentially is heaven for some tribes, the afterlife, the place you go to when your time is finally up and you rejoin Orenda, which is the way I always describe it. It's like the Force from Star Wars. It's essentially the spirit that interconnects all living things on an equal level. And with that, I would like to begin my story. It's known as, the title is The Man Who Would Become Luck. What is luck? Is it a cold probability laced with hopeful intentions, or something deeper, something more? These instances in which the flame of hope flickers within us when something favorable occurs and says, I am still here and hope is not lost. As if just a little bit of that inner flame manifests as a spark, where we can see it outside of ourselves in an often mundane world. Our story starts with a man sitting on a bench atop a hill. Deep in thought, he watches the larkspur and a multitude of wildflowers dance in the valley below. The day seemed almost ethereal in this place, where the sky seemed to stretch on forever, joining the grassy earth at a distant horizon. One could gaze in every direction and not see a soul. And as the young man sat, he thought about life. He thought about his life, one with both its harshness and its sharp edges, and yet its moments of surreal beauty, like this place. He thought of the people he met and how some were like holding coals and cacti, while others were beautifully fragile, like roses made of snow, ready to melt in the warmth of even gentle human hands. He thought of the mountains and valleys, and of the great clearings he had known, and the gentle wilderness which never rejected his lonesome loving self. Satisfied with a life that, while short, was well lived, he began to close his eyes, and for a moment found the silence of sleep. Suddenly, he was shaken awake by the sound of many birds taking flight, a flapping of wings like he had often heard when the startled pigeons of the city decided to take off en masse at the honking of nearby cars. A sound which made memories of the dingy New York streets he once abhorred come to mind. And so he opened his eyes. Most curiously, a stranger had appeared beside him, which caused him to jump, startled at the sudden appearance of someone who would simply blink into existence. The older woman sat beside him. She wore a suit and a top hat of the purest white ever seen, so bright that it hurt to look at as the light fell upon it. She removed her hat to reveal pure white shoulder-length hair and greeted him saying, Hello, sorry for the wait. It won't be long and it's lovely to finally meet you. I bet you're wondering where we are, she began. This is God's waiting room. The young man began to laugh, amused by the idea of this being the afterlife equivalent of the most annoying part of a doctor's visit. So this place is too peaceful to be hell, and too lonely and quiet to be how I pictured heaven. Or rather, is it hell to be left alone with one's thoughts? He pondered. I was never much of a Christian, and religion felt forced and overrated to me. What are you then, an angel or something sinister? The woman sighed. I want to ask you some questions, you see. There is no heaven and no hell, human being. Human beings, as you may imagine, are quite creative. At the end of it, they come to some variation of this place, a world reflective of your innermost peace or turmoil at the moment of death. Each person goes to the same place and are simply assigned a role. The extent to which this role is considered work at all is based on the weight of one's heart and their perception of a life well lived. That's just great. Really great. I'll be trapped in retail for all eternity, said the gentleman. At this, the angel laughed. Here, you very much create your reality, she said. It very much depends on how you answer the following and the depth to which you consider these answers. Think of me as your case manager. I will choose the topic and theme of these questions, and you will answer them so that neither of us has to be here longer than necessary. So let's just get into it, okay? I'm following, said the gentleman. And so the angel began. Question 1. You were born with a disability. It made your life challenging and caused you a great deal of pain between social misunderstandings and a feeling of isolation. This must have undoubtedly felt like a curse, she said with a wild and almost gleeful look now in her eyes. It was at first, not much had changed when I was diagnosed with it so late in life, but things made sense in the harshest of ways. It was learning to love myself all over again, said the gentleman, but not once did I feel unlucky. Scared? Yes. Different? Yes, but not unlucky. Question 2, the angel continued. You lost your partner, whom you would consider your first true love, to violence, invoked by racism and human apathy. Would you consider yourself unlucky now? At this, the man began to cry, and through tear-filled eyes said, I was traumatized, and she was my rock. I hold many regrets that I was powerless. Luck had nothing to do with it. If anything, I blame the God of this world for poor design in the pain. More so, I blamed myself for not seeing the signs that led to such cruelty, where she was the martyr, where she was punished for being white and dating someone who was not. But I do not consider myself unlucky. Years of missing her and survivor's guilt did not make me unlucky. After all, if this place is proof that an afterlife truly exists, then undoubtedly I would see her again. It was my good luck to have met her. It was my good luck to have been loved, and more so my good luck that will make it so I see her again. At this, the angel looked perplexed and then grinned, albeit for a brief and fleeting moment. A length of silence passed between the odd pair. Then the angel said, Question 3. What is your perception of luck? Luck is subjective, said the man. One person's bad luck and fear to a pessimist and realist is able to shake their very world. And perhaps I am a fool and an optimist, but to me, luck is subjective. Misfortune and fortune, bad luck and good luck, they are what we make of them. And pain which exists outside of these has taught me something important. Do you know what? What? Said the angel, enthralled by his line of thought and his unbroken resolve. In my eyes, I was nothing but lucky, said the man. I survived much pain and still found time to smile. My joy came from helping others, and whenever I was afraid, I was lucky that all I helped comforted me. When I struggled, I was lucky to find support in the people and things which kindled hope. And sure, others may call me unlucky because they conflate pain with luck. But luck is subjective. and travels with an enduring spirit. With that, the angel sighed and said, "That will conclude our questions. This was quite fascinating, but it's time to go. We have just the job for you." Curious, the man asked, "And what would that be?" "Wait and see," she replied. The world around them began to dissolve, the ground vanishing briefly into an inky blackness, filling the young man with a sense of dread that the Scrooge of Dickens fame may have felt at seeing this oncoming fate. But then, in a moment's passing, he was back on solid ground, a marble circular room in the center of a vast midnight blue void. In this place, a great fountain sat. The room was bordered by marble and stone pillars through which a starry midnight blue sky could be seen. Without warning, an eldritch, booming voice rang out in this place of ancient existential echoes and mystery. It sounded like many voices in many languages at first, blended deeply until one stood out in a language that the man could comprehend. "The role to which I grant you is as rewarding as it is rattling to one's core. You will become the concept of luck and the change that it brings embodied. You will become the subjectivity of which you have spoken, as intangible as the night and as warm as human hope, or as cold and bitter as a bitter winter. As it is, you will be there to be the fortune favoring those lost and alone, or the malice of misfortune, which will plague the corrupt and hateful. This gift or curse I give to thee, that who knows the way of luck. You who were once a man, now the source I grant you this." And so it was. Someone who was once a human being would become luck, in all of its power untethered, in all of its obscurity. When evil people were apprehended and exposed, luck would be there. When the innocent rejoiced over things large and small, luck would be with them. With the role in the universe no longer vacant, luck would come to aid all those who are kind and honest in their doings, with many sick people healing and recovering from things which were not thought possible. With luck and its good would come peace and healing. With luck and its wrath came justice and truth. And what of the man who became luck? He would never again be alone. And that's our story. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. When I first read that story, it actually like brought tears to my eyes. It was so beautiful, and the way you tell it is very beautifully done. There's a reason why I had Wolfheart go after Debbie, is because the concept of luck and exactly what is it, because it is very different for everybody, because what's lucky for me may not be lucky for somebody else.
I really appreciate your words.
Like I said, beautiful story. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
On a lighter note, I will not be discussing why and how I got my name on this show. You have to come to a comedy show because that's a rated R kind of show. So a different day, a different time. Up next, we have one of my other favorite tellers, who actually got to meet Debbie at the same time. They were at the same thing. It was 7 Stories with Eric and Sylvia. And I'm watching Shane talk, and the reason why Shane drew me in was because if you've listened to Shane talk, she probably has the most country accent I have ever heard. You listen to her and you go, yeah, she's probably from Texas somewhere. but I think you were named champion liar. I mean, you actually are with the Texas Storytelling Guild. I mean, just a massive long line of credentials that come with you. And not to mention, you love ghosts just about as much as I do. So I like that too. So please welcome Shane as our next teller.
Thank you so much. And yes, I actually have a deep Texas accent for Texas. But I recently found out, and I'm going to tell y'all right now, you need to fact check everything I say. And not because I'm not trying to tell the truth tonight, but because every story is subjective. And because all language is metaphor, and I'm just trying to do my best to share with y'all experience. But yeah, so I have a very deep Texas accent for my family, but I heard recently that it is actually the closest to that British accent that came over. And what we do is speak very British accents. And I have another theory about language is that our accents totally depend upon the weather. So in Texas, it is usually much too hot to articulate, to talk fast, to do any of those things. We are a very slow-moving place, except now in this current culture when we're all fast. So that's where that may come from. And my mother actually sent me to elocution lessons when I was in high school, and it did not pay off for her, but I think it just works out fine for me. But it is really interesting because I don't know if you can tell in this light that I have red hair and I have freckles and all of those things. To when someone looks at me, they assume that I'm Irish. But I was born in Texas. My mom and daddies were born in Texas. Their parents were born in Texas. And we go back really far. And then from Texas, we go east to Alabama and to Georgia, and then north up to Virginia. And Ireland is far, far away from us, or so I thought. But the first slur I ever got, I think, and it was really meant negatively, was when I was in kindergarten and somebody called me a white patty, and I had no idea what that meant. And I was devastated. And this is the story that echoed through my family, that I came home and I was so upset. I'm also been, identified as a highly sensitive person. So we had learned sticks and stones may break our bones, but words may never hurt us. Words would hurt me really desperately. And I had no idea what even this word meant at all. And my dad said, "Now, did she say that to your face?" Because I think he knew what it meant. And I said, "No, she said it to my whole body." And just in tears. I was just in tears about it. So, but what she was calling me was Irish. And then it was funny because I got called a lot of things growing up. And you know how you get your nickname from things that happen? Well, I just didn't like any of the names anybody ever called me. I didn't think any of them were good at all. And in high school, I thought that maybe I could pick my own nickname and spread it around amongst my friends, and maybe it would catch on. And the nickname that I picked, because I felt like Debbie, I did not feel lucky at all. So I thought, if I could just call myself Lucky, then I would feel that way. Like, I want to identify as Lucky. And the more people that call you Lucky, maybe that'll rub off. That nickname did not stick, but it's funny because I have lots of memorabilia from that time that it all says Lucky on it. And people will go, "Well, who is that, Shane?" And I'm like, me. Me when I tried to name myself and nobody else would catch on. And then, like I said, I still didn't know that I was Irish, but our family talked about it a lot. And like, I had cousins and we heard that we were Scotch Irish. like the drink. And some people say, no, it's Scots Irish. And I'm like, no, we called ourselves Scotch Irish. But I'm like, but what does that mean? Because we're Texan. Like, I felt Texan. And if I didn't feel Texan, I may or may not feel Viking or maybe Atlantean, but never, never Irish. I didn't know that. But my cousins would get shamrock tattoos and, you know, Aaron go broad. And I'm like, y'all don't even know what that means. And so there came a time on April Fool's Day, which I think is highly appropriate, that I had a dream. And I dreamed that I was in my home office, but it was of a place that I had never even set foot in before. And I saw, my back was to the door, and I saw someone come in and sit in the chair that was by the door, like for my office guests. And I'm thinking, somebody has come into my house, a stranger. And in the dream, I'm trying to go, but I could see out of the corner of my eye that he was an older man and that he had come in and sat in the chair, so not making any kind of moves toward me. And he had his hat in his hand, and he looked as though he was dressed from the early 20th century. And I kind of spun around in my rolly chair toward him, and I said, may I help you? And he looked at me and he said, if you will write my family tree, I will tell you stories. And in my heart, I didn't answer. The dream was over at that moment. But my answer was, yeah, of course, absolutely. And so in this journey that I had, and also going through papers, my mother was a very private person. We saw some things, she told us some things, but when she passed away, you get to go through everything. And I'm finding these things, and after she passed in 2016, I took a trip in December of 2017 to go and find some of our family stories, some of those places that we had been. And one of the things that I had found of my ancestor that, you know, that we were thinking maybe was, and I have to clarify why I was looking for this ancestor, because after my mom passed, my daughter and I took a trip to Ireland, and it was scheduled before she had passed away. And, you know, like, but she passed away like the week before we were supposed to leave, but she had donated her body to science, and which was something big in of itself. And she was going to be cremated, and they weren't going to get her back to us for a year to 18 months. And so I just looked at everybody and I said, I don't know why we need to do a memorial service than our 3-day, you know, Baptist custom tradition of what she was a part of. And so we went ahead and went to our trip to Ireland. And it was a great distraction to have to drive in a rental car on the wrong side of the car, on the wrong side of the street. I kept my mind off the grief of losing my mother. I was highly attentive, and the turn. Anyway, it was a big deal. But anytime that I would sit anywhere for more than 10 or 15 minutes at a time, somebody would sidle up next to me and say, so where are you people from? And they would say that with an Irish accent that I can't even do, so we're just going to have to pretend. And I would say, Texas. And they'd say, no, from here. And I said, I have no idea. And it would their looks on their face would be as though I slapped them. Like, it was like, oh, how can you not know your people? And I was like, I can't even explain my life to you, but I don't know. And so I would go through surnames that I had, and every surname that would come around, when it got to Hennessy, they would say, there. That's the name that you need to track down. So that was the important part of why then the next year, when I was going to track down my Hennessy, And it turns out that my great grandfather may or may not have been from Ireland. Every record of him, his birthday and where he was born was different on every single census that I found. And I was like, oh, this is a man and a refugee probably that's running and saying whatever he needs to say safe and accepted. And another thing that was interesting that I believe about my great grandfather was that he probably passed himself for English to marry into my family, because we seem to have been very strict about our rules about who we did and did not procreate with. And so he married into our family, and that is, I cannot tell you the breadth of how I feel lucky that Irish got into my English ancestry, because they are a different group of people than the Britons. So, but it was very powerful for me. And also that year, this is a kind of a tumultuous summer that was happening for me. I had a cousin who had lived his life the way he was supposed to, and was looking to start living once he retired. And he retired, and before he got his first retirement check, he dropped dead of a heart attack right in front of his daughter. But he was the cousin that had every Irish tattoo that he could think of to get. He identified so much as Irish, and one of the places he never got to go was Ireland. And I had taken him to Ireland with me, and he was there on his birthday in ashes, and he was cremated as well. And we had another memorial. We had so many memorial services for him, but we had a memorial service on his 50th birthday, the same summer that I found out that we really were Irish, that he felt something, that he knew, that we didn't have a piece of paper or paperwork, but he knew, and other members of my family, probably knew from experience or whatever, but he knew that he was Irish and identified as so. And that was also the year, the beach that we were at to have his 50th 50th birthday ceremony was the beach that was hit by Hurricane Harvey. And I was in Texas, in Austin, when Hurricane Harvey hit. And so I wasn't threatened by the danger that happened, but I had never been that close and to that strong of a hurricane that I could hear the rain circling around me. And I was by myself. It was very disturbing. I was supposed to get to Dallas to house sit for another. I was house sitting for a friend in Austin, supposed to get to Dallas to house sit for another friend in Dallas. And the gas was off, could you get gas to get there? Like everything was disrupted. It was just chaos. And I make it to the house which I'm actually in now. This was the house that I was house sitting. And I got here in time. My friend got off on his trip. And I had never been inside this house before. I knew him. This was kind of when we were first becoming friends. And there was a room upstairs that I just was drawn to. And I would get up every morning and go sit in the chair and the sofa and look out the window and journal and have my morning coffee, and the dogs would come curl up with me. And it was in the first week, probably 3 days in, that I look at this room and I realize that all the decorations and everything are different and the setup, but this is the room that was in my dream where the man came to me and said, if you find write my family tree, I'll tell you stories. And Also, the name of this house is the same name as my great-grandfather. So this is a place, this is a very magical place for me. And I hope that it's lucky. But one of the things that, and I don't know how long I've been talking, so if I have time, one of the things that makes me glad that I am Irish is the connection to the land and the land spirits and the honoring of nature and the equity in which people are treated, and not always, but that connection to the land is what I love about Texas. I realize, like, when you leave, there's a lot of propaganda that you get fed growing up. But the reason that I love this place is because my land ancestors are here. And when the Native Americans or the indigenous peoples were marched from the East Coast, they came through Texas. They eventually got pushed out of Texas and into Oklahoma. And they call that sometimes the Trail of Tears, and there's multiple ones. There wasn't just one. But basically, they were forced death marches of people who were kicked out of their homes and in their lands, their ancestral lands that they had lived for generations and generations. And there was a group, and mostly it gets attributed to the Choctaw, but when I grew up, I heard it was the Cherokee. And in a symposium that I was on Zoom listening, that there were multiple indigenous groups that when they would get the world news, and it wasn't just isolated into these major news people, but like people were giving you news that they knew and found. They took up a collection and sent it right after, like just within the decade after they had that forced death march. They took up a collection and sent it to the Irish during the potato famine. And that was the connection. They understood that those people were being starved out by the people who were powering over them at the time. And I also found out there was a ship from Istanbul that came with supplies that was refused entry to help the Irish. And there's also Celtic connections through Turkey in Göbekli Tepe, if you get the chance. But we are all connected. And not understanding that, I don't know where that comes from, but I am damn lucky that I'm Irish, because I think that's where my understanding comes from. And if I dedicate this to anything, it's the reunification of Ireland, and what I referred to when I went as my motherland. But I was like, do people call it that? And my Irish friends said, no, just you, because you belong there. And I really, after visiting, felt that I did. And I do now proudly identify as Irish, because my trip there woke something up in me that was real and exists. So, and I would also like to say one more thing, that I will say that this is Happy Irish Heritage Day, because St. Patrick and his religious cult has also done much damage to this place. And I would love for him and his ilk to be voted off the island.
Agreed, Shane. Thank you. I've always said two things about Irish people, which I don't know, it's a stereotypical thing, but I get to joke about it because I'm a comedian and I'm also Irish. So there's two things that I am. It's loud and I will never stop talking. And apparently in death, I will probably do the same. So I guess before Warren Shane, I'm coming back. I don't know.
I think that's great. You can come talk to me because obviously I can hear you even if you're on the other side.
I feel bad for my children because apparently I'm going to come back and bother them as well and still continue to talk. I hope everyone is enjoying the show so far. We're going to move on to my story. So buckle up, buttercups, because this is an interesting one that I decided to write. It's all new. Nobody's heard this one yet. And it's touched on a subject that it's a very interesting weaving story. So it's going to be weaving. Like I said, there's an interesting turn. Again, I'm going to keep with the theme of, I don't know if it was luck. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. Here's what I can say. You know, there's that saying, lady luck tonight. I think there's a whole song on it, right? I'm pretty sure my lady luck disappears for random weeks at a time. She's drunk somewhere in a bar, on vacation, gallivanting off on malarkey and shenanigans and doing whatever it is that she's going to do. Point is, she shows up when she feels like it. Okay, I've dealt with that my entire life. So let's start by saying everyone who knows my story knows that my mom had liver disease. And she had an autoimmune disorder, which was lupus. That's how she got the liver disease. She needed a liver transplant. And boy, she was on the fast track to dying. Let me tell you, no joke. February of 2022, she was admitted to UW. For those who don't know, UW stands for University of Washington, if you're not from here, if you're not local. Less than 24 hours of being in the hospital, she fell into a coma. She did wake up, thankfully. The providers at UW are wonderful. They kept her alive physically and mentally. I include mentally because when you wake up from a coma and you are told that you are dying and that you probably have about 6 to 8 weeks to live, that's rough, really rough. She was very sick. I have pictures, I have, because I documented the whole process, being, who I am. So without a new liver, 6 to 8 weeks tops. My sister did not qualify. I did not qualify. My stepdad did not qualify. We were running out of family members to pick from. So our hope was slowly fading. By the end of March of 2022, it was really looking grim. She had gotten so sick, she no longer could use a living donor. She needed like the whole shebang. She needed the whole liver. She needed it from somebody who was either dying or was deceased, like on that edge. So the odds of finding a match at this point, we're already at the end of March. We've got maybe another couple weeks left, if that. It's not good. So my stepdad and I literally started planning her funeral. Now, I'm going to pause the story a little bit to give you this information because it is important for the interweaving of the story, which is, everyone knows I'm a public figure. I'm not an A-lister. I'm not claiming to be like, I don't know, Ben Affleck or anything like that. But I'm in the public eye enough. I went on Facebook and I would give live updates on my mom all the time, like on video. That's how kids do it these days. It helped me stay sane. It updated all of my friends and family at once so they could just go to Facebook and I would not get inundated with messages. And especially with my brain, it would have been just like way too much. And I love using my platform to educate others about disabilities and living with those disabilities in a real life experience, because I am disabled. My mom is disabled. I've done many interviews, podcasts, speeches on this subject. And this is where I tell it, this is why I say keep this in mind. In fact, I met a nice young couple here in Puyallup, where I live, by the name of Matthew and Laura Keaton. They, like I said, are married, have 3 kids, by the way, all autistic, very cool. Homeschooled, husband has cerebral palsy. So I was on his podcast, lovely people. And their podcast name, just because I love saying it, is Keeping It Real. Get it? Keaton It Real, keeping it real. Huh? So keep this in mind as we move forward in this story. So I'm planning my mom's funeral. I get a call on April 2nd, which is World Autism Day. They found a match for my mom. It was the luckiest day of my life and her life, because my mom went into surgery and it was a success. She is living and thriving, and she is still here today. Here's where it gets interesting. Thanks. Yes, it's very, very fortunate. My mom received her liver from a man in Oregon who went into cardiac arrest. Now, the social worker who was handling the case in Oregon for him was a church member and churchgoer at the church of my aunt, who is my mom's sister, where they happened to be praying for her the last 2 weeks. The only reason she knew where the liver was going was because she recognized the recipient's name on the folder. The man's last dying wish, his last dying wish on the table as he was dying, was he wanted to donate his organs. So let's fast forward a little bit, because my story's not done yet. Oh, we have some more. We have a little more little weaving here that we got to go through. Because remember, I mentioned this family, right? So let's fast forward to February of 2023. My mom's getting close to her 1-year mark. Woo, that's a good thing. So what about this couple, the Keatons, Matthew and Laura? They had followed my mom's battle with her liver disease and the transplant success. Even Matthew's mom had friended me on Facebook, which I was so humbled. She was like a fan of like my art and comedy and stuff. And so like, and they would leave me comments and send me messages, and they were so sweet through the whole thing because they were there, they knew, and watched all of the updates. One day in February, just last month, Laura felt sick. She wasn't feeling good, said she needed to go to the bathroom. So she went to the bathroom. Her husband was like a little concerned, you know how you feel concerned, but he was like, okay. Well, a little time had passed and he went to go check on her and there was no response. So he bursts through the door, he gets in. They find Laura unconscious and unresponsive on the floor. Her head had smashed against the wall. They took her to Good Sam up here. Everyone knows Good Sam if you're local. And a couple days later, they had declared her brain dead. My friend last month was declared brain dead. And per her wishes, she was taken off life support. But because she had followed my mom's journey, her last dying wish was that she was an organ donor. So Michelle, the mom that had friended me on Facebook and had followed through all of this journey, posted on Facebook Laura's last walk, her honor walk, her last high-fiving as she was being wheeled down the hallway. And they played her favorite song, With the Rains Down in Africa. And I got to say my final goodbye to her through Facebook, just as she had watched my mom's journey on Facebook. And they wheeled her down, they harvested her organs as she took her last breath. My mom got her life back because someone donated their life. Never in my life did I think I would have to watch a friend donate theirs so someone could get their life back. I did find out 6 people received organs from her. 6 people got to live because Laura became an organ donor. So is it luck? I don't know. I want to say thank you to Laura and want to say how much I was lucky to have known her. I'm grateful that she became an organ donor. And that maybe my lady luck, yeah, she's off drunk sometimes doing vacations and whatever else that she is doing. But I do know that I promise she shows up when it counts the most. I've been polite, Kitty. Thank you. I hope everyone has enjoyed this show. This has been Luck of the Draw. You're welcome to stay for a few minutes. We'll keep the green room open for anybody who has questions and wants to talk with the tellers. Otherwise, you're log off at any time. Yay.
It was so nice meeting all of you.
Yes, thank you, Wolfie.
Very moving stories, all of them. Thank you to all the tellers. You gave me a lot to think about.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, yeah, these were like some the real feel stories, you know.
For sure.
Well, I just want to say that I really appreciate being in y'all's company. I knew 3/4 of this lineup because I've heard stories from them before, so I knew, and then I knew Wolfheart coming in was going to be amazing from listening to y'all too. So I just appreciate being in y'all's company. So greatness.
They were really good stories, heartening. I feel lucky to be here. So I have a donor question, Polite Kitty. I've had cancer. I was told I can't be a donor because I've had cancer. Is that true?
That's true.
That is so stupid.
But that's what my mother passed up. And what she did was donate her body to science so the medical students could use it.
That's what my parents did, but the problem is I want to feed things and I want to be a tree. So
oh, me too. Like just throw me out.
We already figured that out, that piece of it, where I'll go and everything, assuming we're still in Washington. But that's why I won't do the science thing, because they fill you full of formaldehyde and anyway.
Well, I want to tell you that I have been a tree before, and you're going to love it.
Oh, I have to.
I'm hoping to become taxidermy.
Oh, really?
What did you say, Wolfheart?
I said I'm hoping to become taxidermy. Just stuff me and put me in a museum. I'm not sure of what, but this is my...
I mean, that might be nice too. I don't know.
That or give me to a bunch of happy mushrooms, and then we're
do we get to see what you look like?
Yeah, sure, for a bit. My apologies, my camera's been off because I was having a bit of a flare-up with one of my conditions earlier.
There he is.
There, Pro9.
Hey,
Good to meet you there. Sorry.
It's all right. It's nice to meet
Good
you
to
all as
meet
well.
you, Wolfhart.
I'm in this weird phase of my life where all kinds of bizarre symptoms and things are popping up, MRI this and electrodes that. But
Well,
yeah,
you
so
don't look
earlier
old
my
enough.
entire face was covered with markings that are from a thyroid issue. So I was like, okay, let me let it calm down a bit and then I'll
Well, it's good to see you.
same to you. It's
That's
been
how,
nice
like,
meeting all of you.
yeah, that's how like Wolfie and I met, because we're all like in the disabled groups and like autism and all this other stuff, and like, because we deal with all this all day. Yeah.
Funny enough, my face is usually like a lot smaller, but as you can see earlier, the cheeks are like swollen to like 3 times their size. We haven't quite figured out what it is yet, as my family has many different autoimmune diseases that run through it. But at this point, I'm just like, bring it on. So it doesn't
Yeah.
bother me too much. Indigenous spirituality is knowing no matter where you go, you're always going to be reconnected to the people you care about. And if you're not, here or there or anywhere, you're always going to be able to help people that you do leave behind inevitably. So it's been an interesting journey on and off.
Well,
Well, thank you, everybody. I gotta run.
put in the chat, the Seattle Toy Storytellers Guild is a nonprofit. We do run off of donations. So there is the links there to send in donations if you possibly can. This show tonight is sponsored by 4Culture, but again, any donations that you can put in does help this guild continue to keep running between different fests, story fests that are coming up. Before my come up, I'll let you guys know. Next month is April, so we have a story fest for Earth Day. That is coming up, and yes, we also have in May, we have our last one that'll be coming up as well, which I believe is a Liars Fest. And Anne, if you correct me, who's for April? I'm like blanking at the moment. Who's April? Anne, yeah.
It's Margaret Reed McDonald.
Margaret Reed McDonald and Tom Rawson.
Tom Rawson is the one that that was it. I remembered Margaret. Yeah, so they'll be for Earth Day, and then May is the Liars Fest, and I believe we are getting somebody for that as well. Tom, I believe is his first name. No.
Tom Dowd. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. No, Steve Dowd.
Steve Dowd.
D-A-U-T. Steve Dowd.
Too many names. I can never remember.
I might mention that this program is going to be at 5:30 instead of 7. And the reason why is we're trying to have a program for the entire family. It's going to be stuff that's family friendly. Margaret Reed McDonald is a fantastic storyteller and has been telling stories to children for decades. She's written, 60 to 80 books, many of which are collections of children's stories and that. She's doing a special workshop coming in May. It's going to be a live, not an internet workshop, where she's going to do on a Saturday, about 8 hours of instruction in storytelling. A great deal. It's $30 for the workshop because the Guild is helping to sponsor it. And that will be in mid-May before the Liars Contest in the latter part of May. So if you want information on these things, you can go to the Seattle Storytellers Guild website, seattlestorytellers.org, and there are links there that will take you to further information.
Yep. Thank you, Barry. And I also put the link to our website in the chat as well for anybody who also wants it. Yes, Judith?
And we have 3 slots at Folklife, live storytelling at Folklife. So if you come to the Folklife Festival, you can watch it. People for real. But thank you to our virtual tellers tonight. Thank you.
Yes, I do love the virtual thing because it's very accessible for many of us, especially people like Judith who travel to Germany. Very jealous.